That with the introductions, but for those who, I don't know if anybody here has read the book, I try to actually hone in. I want to ask Elda about this in particular because it's not all about rock and roll, or for want of a better term, but live music. And there's a point at the end of the 60s where, after Woodstock has happened and so on, nobody's quite sure where rock music is going. And this band, the Magic Tramps, come to town with Eric Emerson has basically brought them back to town, and they go to play at Max's, and they do this show, and Paul Morrissey takes them aside, Andy Warhol's right-hand man, for want of a better term, I hope, takes them aside and says, guys, rock and roll is dead in New York City. It's about theatre now, it's about cabaret. And then you had all these incredible plays going on that I was writing in the book basically started the glitter rock scene. Like, glitter rock did not come out of rock, it came out of glitter plays. And can you talk to that, Elda? Because I think this stuff's really important. That came out of Max's and so on, right?
Yeah, well, actually, in the 60s, there was a group called John Vaccaro's Theater of the Ridiculous, which drew such outrageous actresses as Ruby Lynn Rayner, Jackie Curtis, Hollywood Lawn, Candy Darling, Eric, and a lot of the people that used to make movies with Andy, also on their off time, used to be in these outrageous plays. And I mean, they were outrageous. I was in one called Femme Fatale, The Three Faces of Gloria. Jane County was in that one. And Patti Smith, actually. It was the first time that I met Patti, and we were in this play together, I mean, it was pretty outrageous because you had all these incredible artists around you, and you had the weirdest ways of being able to express your creative talent, because there was this underground scene, and it was, again, not just music. It wasn't music, basically. It was all coming off of the Warhol thing. And when they said, oh, well, punk rock, this is something new, because people put safety pins through their clothing. Well, Jackie Curtis used to wear, if you know who Jackie is, she's in the Walk on the Wild Side song. Jackie used to wear tablecloths and rib stockings and tablecloths pinned together with safety pins. So, to some people, punk looked new. But to me, it was just another regurgitation of that same madness that was going on in that underground scene. And yeah, Max's was the hub of it until you had Mercer Art Center and the Dolls came up. And the Dolls started to offer something that influenced the scene into music scene, more so, along with Eric and and the newer bands. You had Shaker with Jerry Nolan and Buddy Bowser and all those guys at Mercer Art Center. And then when CB's opened up, though, that's when it was really cool, because there was a new group coming at that point, younger people.
And you say the thing about younger people. One of the things that I was just constantly amazed by in researching this book, I mean, to be honest, Tommy and Fred, it was this idea that there I am, kind of imagining you as maybe like starting out with the Ramones and television in your teens, and actually you're in your 20s. And I have to say, by the way, being in London, we really thought the Ramones were we thought they were so scary, and we were giving. I don't mean me personally, but we were giving the world the Sex Pistols, who I think were genuinely scary. But I, for better or for worse, spent a lot of time on the football terraces, and all the older kids in 1976. For some other reason, I was kind of adopted by a group of kids about 3 years older than me, who caused a lot of trouble and used to keep me out of it. But they were all massively into the Ramones from day one. Like in 1976, they got that first album and they were just there for life. And we looked up to the Ramones, or we viewed the Ramones as being like this incredibly scary street gang. And yet something I found, and there is some truth to that, I guess, Dee Dee didn't have an easy childhood, and Johnny was, clearly a tough guy, and Jeff as well, Joey Ramone didn't, and you came from Hungary in the Revolution, didn't have an easy time. But there's something that I got when researching the book that, people try to make out that the Ramones, with doing your 1.5 minute songs at CB's, sort of didn't know what you were doing. Like somehow there was an incompetence. And I mean, it's completely the opposite, isn't it? It's like you knew exactly what you were doing. This was like art, right?
Well, you know, we were saying before about the Andy Warhol Maxis thing. The thing is, the acts that played CBGBs were already in their 20s. You know, everybody looked younger, but we were a little bit more mature than the average rock and roll band or something like that. And there was an artistic element to every band. And certainly from my perspective, it was totally an artistic thing. But you gotta realize, the Ramones were genuinely scary people, because these guys were brilliantly psychotic. And so that's what made them great, also made them impossible. But they were scary in really strange ways. I mean, they were living in another dimension mentally, really. And each individual in the band was in their own little world. But combined together, it was a very formidable thing. But there was a lot of intelligence, a lot of angst, a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of talent to make things so simple. And they had it, you know. And
you say they as if the third person. I mean, the truth is that you didn't expect to actually be in the band, did you? Originally.
Yeah, originally they were a concept of mine. I knew these kids from Queens who basically, I saw the Dolls, and I saw what they were doing. It was fantastic. And I knew these guys from Queens. I said, boy, if these guys picked up some instruments, they would be really an interesting band. So I suggested they do that. They got some instruments. They showed up. We had a little rehearsal studio, me and my partner of mine, and who became the Ramones road manager. His name is Monty Malik. Anyway, they show up with original songs. I go, what? They had songs. And these were the most bizarre, strange songs I've ever heard. Anyway, originally Joey played drums, but he wasn't so hot. And we found out he was the best singer. We brought him up front to be the lead singer. We were looking for drummers. We auditioned drummers. They just couldn't get what we were looking for. I had never played drums in my life, but I would sit down and show them what to do. Make a long story short, I ended up the drummer. And that's kind of how I got involved as a musician in the band. And I held out for about another 4 years, I guess, or whatever it was. And then we brought in another drummer so I could keep my sanity. And I just kept writing songs and producing them for a while. But that's the story.
And you know, something about those early days, because people would see the Ramones. I mean, I got this quote so much from everybody. They would see the Ramones and say, like, you know, these guys like were playing, you know, 16 songs in 25 minutes. It was like kind of blinking, you know, it was just insane. And then Craig Leon, who co-produced and produced, you know, your first album, he actually gave me a quote saying that he didn't find it like that. He said the Ramones didn't do 13 songs in 20 minutes. They did one big song. It was actually quite a prog thing. And that made me think that, like, you know, there is that art element. People like Chris France from Talking Heads said that he really saw you as being an artist. Like, you had the minimalism, you had the Warhol minimalism down to a T. This was not tomfoolery. This was like Andy Warhol's minimalism just brought down to like a fine art. Do you agree with any of that?
Yeah.
I definitely thought that the first time I saw you guys. I said, oh my God, that's no wonder, you know, Danny, once he saw you guys, was ready to sign you, because it really was Warhol painting in music.
Yeah, we had a great love of rock and roll. We were like an encyclopedia of music and rock and everything. But there definitely was thought behind it all, and we knew what worked, we knew what didn't work, we knew what was good, we knew what wasn't good, and we just honed everything down, and just everything mattered. It's complex because there's a lot of things involved with it, but it's something that is seemingly simple on the surface is actually very complex. I'm talking about the Ramones entity in itself, their music, everything about them. And it's a very complex thing that happened through the interaction of 4 people.